Welcome to the Queens of Moxie. I'm Mary Kay Campbell, the host of this program, and I'm so excited that you've decided to join us today. Every week, we bring amazing women to our podcast to talk about how they have stepped into joy and reclaimed their moxie and are living their authentic life. I want to get started, but before we do, I want to remind you to subscribe to the weekly email. Simply go to queensofmoxie.com and click on Weekly Inspiration. That way, every Monday morning, you'll get a link to the latest podcast, a beautiful image, and a fabulous quote. It's a great way to start out your week. So let's get started with today's podcast. So we're here today with Queens of Moxie with Ariel Bredder, and I am so excited, y'all. She and I just met recently, but there are times when you meet people, you're like, oh, you are my soul sister. You are part of my gang. And I just absolutely felt that way as soon as Ariel and I started talking. And I'm just so delighted that she's here with us today. I want to give you a little bit of background about her. She's gone kind of a circuitous route to get to where she is, but it's all played into each other and all led to the same kind of thing. And so she graduated from Christopher Newport University with a business degree focusing in marketing. And she did marketing and sales. Then she did some bookkeeping, which is totally different than marketing, which is always an interesting thing when people use their right and left side brains. She had her own Mary Kay business. She decided to become a certified life coach and continue doing this bookkeeping for small businesses. And then became the assistant director for it's the SBDC, which is the Small Business Development Center here in Central Virginia. And if I were to put the Central Virginia before, it's even more alphabet soup. It's very funny when people try to say it really quickly. So, and that really has brought all of those things together, that leadership development, that coaching, that bookkeeping, really understanding what it is to start a business, to run a business, to do all those things. But in addition to that, she started a podcast really kind of like not too far into the pandemic in September of 2020. And I love this about her. And this is something that I share with her, is that people have all these amazing stories. And, as a podcast host, you get to talk to people about their lives and they get to share their stories. And that's what she does with her podcast, which is called It's Time to Be You. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me, Mary Kay. And I just feel like the same way, like when we got to meet and get to know each other over coffee, I was just like, oh my gosh, she is like my person and we are so aligned. So I'm really honored to be here on your podcast. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, so glad you're here. So glad you're here. So, I think what's really interesting is, so often when we're young, and I have a 17 and a 20-year-old, so I can say this firsthand, you think you know where you're going in life, and you go to college and you get this degree and you think this is what I'm doing. And then life takes you on a journey. And like I said, I never would have thought somebody who focuses in marketing would do bookkeeping. But my dad was an engineer and I tutored math in college. And I have a degree in writing, and writers usually aren't math people, but I get it. And I actually love the fact that it's so quantitative. Like you can figure it out and you can run the proof and you can go backwards and forwards and you can prove that, yes, you got the right answer in so many things. And I'm sure bookkeeping, while it's not algebra, is similar in that it's precise, it's exact.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, just thinking about that, I'm like, sometimes we put ourselves in a box of like, oh, I can't do this because I'm a writer, like I'm not good at math or whatever. But it's just like, you just got to like lean into what you're interested in or what opportunities kind of come up. Like never in a million years would I thought like I would do bookkeeping and that I would enjoy it. But it's like, I like having the opportunity to use the different parts of my brain, because it's like, sometimes I really love being like creative and social, but then like sometimes I get tired of that. I'm like, all right, I need to switch to the other side of my brain and be more, strategic and logical and look at those numbers and be by myself. And so it's kind of like this good balance that I've kind of, it's taken a while for me to figure out what's worked for me and my brain and how it works. But it's been a process, and now I'm like really happy about how it's all like come together. It's been
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. And I think anytime you're an entrepreneur, you have the opportunity to learn, to
Hmm.
grow, to develop, to test yourself in different ways. And I know that that is what led you into becoming a certified coach and to
Yes.
looking into to that realm of things. So tell us what it is um about leadership development, about entrepreneurship that prompted you to do that.
Yeah. And, I feel like that's kind of like with all the different things I've done has really added to that. But it's like I've always, had an interest in business and, marketing, especially because I see that as like making things better. Of like someone has an idea and they want to share it with people. Like, how can we share what they have to offer to more people so that they like want it and understand it and are excited about it? But then, I really started my entrepreneurial journey when I started my Mary Kay business, and
Mhm.
that was like a lot of self-development. And I was like, if you're an entrepreneur, or if like you ever want to start a business, it's like the biggest like deep dive into working on yourself as well as working on the business, because you gotta open up to aspects that you may not be used to, with like the discipline and like really understanding what your wants and needs are and why it's important to you. Because with running your own business, typically people work their 9 to 5 because like, oh, I need to make money. I show up, do what I'm told. But when you're running a business, it's like you got to wake up every day and make yourself do the work, in order to make money. So
Mhm.
I think, so for me, it really was kind of like learning more about myself and why I was doing it, to help me keep going. But the other thing I saw was, especially as a Mary Kay consultant, I worked with a lot of women, and that allowed me to see, women in different areas of their lives. That, you had some women that really felt like they weren't beautiful, and like I helped them feel beautiful for the first time by teaching them how to take care of themselves with their skincare, and showing them makeup that wasn't too complicated, but then also giving them an opportunity of like, you can have more. And that was really it for me. Of like, I think so many people are stuck of thinking that like this is just how life is, and I hate it, but it's what it is and that's it. But it's like, no, like if you want something different in your life, you can go after, you can change your circumstances, and it takes a different like mindset shift to get out of your previous ways of thinking, but also action as well. So like I kind of love helping people see new perspectives of like, how can we help you have more? How can you take the next small step to change your life? And so I'm a huge like fan of just like small wins and celebrating the small little things in life, and practicing gratitude so that you can start to appreciate life and see it in a different way. So those kind of little things have added up for me to just wanting to help people just live their best lives. And I personally, I know what it feels like to, deal with anxiety and depression, and like feel really sad and struggling. So it's like, I never want anyone else to feel that way. So that's also kind of impacted me wanting to help people. Of like,
Mhm.
I don't want to see anyone else struggling. I want people to, be able to be vulnerable and ask for help, and just to make the most out of their lives. Cause I know when it's like, you're in the dark, you're super in the dark, but there is light. And I want to remind people to like find the light. So
Mhm.
that's that's all of it kind of put together, and
Yeah.
why I kind of just, love being here to help people and
Yeah. Yeah,
whatever I
you
can.
said a lot of things in there, and I
Yeah.
wanna unpack it some, but let's start with the mental health aspect.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about how that's a really important part of why you decided to do coaching. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, you've had some personal struggles with that, right?
Yeah.
And what was it that helped you to get out of that place? What allowed you to move beyond that?
Yeah, for me, it's something that I had struggled with for a while, especially, in high school and in college. And it wasn't really until after college that I started hearing from my other friends that like they had struggled with mental
Yeah.
health, and knowing that it like the way I was feeling about things wasn't just me, because
Yeah.
before I felt like really alone in my feelings.
Mhm.
But just having other people share their stories and being vulnerable and what has helped them, it kind of gave me like more of the feeling of not being alone, but also the courage to like get help and, talk to a doctor about it. And, I've had a journey of medication and, being on it and then off, but then really realizing like, no, I need to be on it and that's okay. And it
Yeah.
helps me. And, and having therapy and, I see it as like, we all go through things and it's
Mhm.
okay to talk to someone. And the more
Mhm.
that you can be vulnerable with someone, the more helpful it is to just know that you are not the only one, that your
Right.
feelings are valid,
Yep.
and that you're not going to have those feelings forever. Like you're not going to be stuck there forever.
Right.
So, yeah, just having those supportive friends. And
Mhm.
that's another reason why I have my podcast is to
Yeah.
share those vulnerable stories so that other women especially can know that they're not alone and can get through these tough times.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm not sure why, but I think so many of us do feel like I'm the only one that's feeling this way, or
Mhm.
and that feeling of isolation of, and sometimes it's I don't want to burden other people, but sometimes it's
Yes.
also uh, is something wrong with me,
Mhm.
and this feeling of I'm not good enough, or, there are so many contributing factors. And
Yeah.
the reality is with mental health, and depression in particular is, your brain is firing, firing, firing. But the chemicals that connect those fires, those synapses to the receptors are missing. So your
Yeah.
brain is firing, 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 and there's nothing there that's creating that bridge to the
Mhm.
receptors. So you're exhausted from
Yeah.
firing, but you're also depressed, anxious, whatever it might be, because you're not getting the chemicals that you're supposed to have in your brain. And I
Mhm.
think so many there's unfortunately there's a lot of stigma around mental health in our
Yeah.
country. And
Yeah.
um I've been in healthcare most of my career, so I have a different and deeper appreciation for the importance of mental health resources and treatment,
Yeah.
and a different understanding of it than the
Right.
layperson might. And look at it like if you were a diabetic and you didn't have insulin, you would
Mhm.
take insulin.
Yeah.
Your body's not producing what it needs, you supplement it. It's
Right.
the same thing. And it's so hard because people feel like there's something wrong, or that they should be able to control this, or they should be able to make it better.
Yeah.
And if your body's not producing the chemicals it needs, there's not a whole lot you can do to get those chemicals there. You can
Yeah.
eventually sometimes get out of the rut, but why would you wait years to feel better when you can be yourself again
Right.
with medication and therapy?
Yeah, and kind of going off of what you said of like like why, and I think especially with women, it's hard because we're trying to be so perfect all the time and do stuff for everyone else. And it's like we don't want to be a burden. We don't want to let
Mhm.
we don't like for me especially, because I'm always the person that like is my friends come to me for help and
Right,
advice. I
right.
can't let them know I need help and advice too.
Mhm.
Sometimes like I've got to be the strong one, or
Mhm.
feeling like, well, like why do I have these feelings? There's nothing wrong that happened, to me. And people are dealing with way worse things.
Right,
I should be happy, or I should, be
right.
grateful. Like we have all these shoulds in life that
Mhm.
make it harder for us.
Mhm.
And then for another way, that I was told to kind of look at like medication and stuff is like, for eyesight, like I wear contacts and glasses. Everyone's vision is different. You have people that do have perfect vision and don't need it. But if my eyesight was a little bit bad and like the doctor recommended that I get glasses, like I wouldn't be like, no, but it could be worse. So I'm not gonna, see because someone else can have worse eyesight than me. So it's like the same thing of like, yes,
Yeah.
someone might have, a deeper mental health issue than you, but that doesn't mean that you can't take medication or do the things that you need to do to get you to the better place.
Right.
Or like if you broke your leg, you wouldn't like feel like, oh, my leg's fine. I can, I don't really need that cast. Like,
Right.
so it's like you do things with, other aspects of your health. It should be the same way
Yeah.
with your mental health, even if
Yeah.
it may not, for some people, it may not be a forever thing. Some
Right.
people, it may be a forever thing,
Right.
but why it's just so important to actually like be self-aware and talk to people and see what works best for
Yeah.
you. And, it is a struggle because it can be a process, but it's like once you stick with that process and,
Mhm.
work with someone or have the supportive team around you, like you will get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and one of the other things that is very common is when people do finally recognize, okay, I need to get on medication. A lot of people will get on it and
Mhm.
it titrates up. In other words, it builds up in your blood system. And you
Yeah.
get to that place, you're like, wow, I feel great. And a lot of
Yeah.
people think, oh, I don't need the medication anymore. And
Yeah.
they go off it. And it takes 6 weeks to titrate out. And
Yep.
so it takes a while. And then all of a sudden you hit rock bottom again. And then you're like, oh no, I need the medication.
Yeah.
And it's textbook. People do it all the time. And so, for those listening here today, if they're feeling like maybe I should look into this, it's important to recognize that it's going to gradually get better. And when
Mhm.
you're feeling good, you need to stay there for a while.
Yeah.
And, after 3 months, 6 months, then you can evaluate with your physician on whether or not you can go off it. And you're
Yeah.
right. Some people, it's episodic and they only need it for a season of their life. And sometimes you need it on a regular basis, on an ongoing basis, and it's something that is just part of what you do and
Yeah.
part of your routine and the medications you take. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And in fact, if we can shift our perspective to there's something wrong with me and get something wrong enough to get something to I'm taking care of myself so I can take care
Yeah.
of you better.
Yeah.
You know what?
And
We want
that's
to be the caregivers. We are the caregivers. We pour into everybody else. Well, you know what? Pouring into ourselves is equally as important and just, in some ways more important than pouring into others,
oh yeah.
because if your water pitcher is empty, you can't put anything else in somebody else's. You're
Exactly.
completely spent. It's the same kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so it's something that I think that we're starting to have those conversations. People are starting to change their perspectives on it. But I think a lot of times people are thinking about it for other people and not themselves. And so
Oh yeah.
I do think it takes women and everybody being courageous and saying, like I'm on Lexapro. I
Yeah.
got it on the first time when after having my daughter
Yeah.
and went through a whole bunch of really stressful things. And then I got off it and I was good for a while. And then I had another really stressful situation. It was actually my divorce, got on it then, got off it. And then I went on it a third time and I was like, okay, you know what? They say if you get on it a third time, you probably just need to stay on it.
Yeah.
I'm on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, for me, I believe it was Prozac that I started with. And when you talked about like, yeah, you like build up and then you like build off. When I first did it, because I was like, I didn't really want to be on it forever.
Yep.
So I was like, oh, I'm feeling good. And at the time, I didn't really love the doctor I had. So that's why it's
Mhm.
also really good to find a
Yep.
doctor that
Yep.
works for you. So I just stopped and it was
Oh yeah.
not good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, do not recommend. Please consult your doctor before just stopping because it made things way worse. And then I was off
Mhm.
of it for a year or so, and that was really hard. But then I got back on it and
Yeah.
I, found a doctor that worked for me and we readjusted. So I think I'm on Lexapro now too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it works for us. But yeah, and everything works for people differently.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah, it's just
There
like
are and there
finding
are a
the right.
wide variety, like,
Yeah.
I have ADHD, and so they're like, "Let's put you on Wellbutrin because that could also help with your
Yeah.
ADHD." Guess what? It made me so ridiculously anxious, and I
Yeah.
couldn't sleep, and I was like, "Yeah, no.
Yeah.
This is not good," and
Yeah.
so it was really important to, like, play with it, and I
Right.
was on 10 milligrams, and that was good, but it wasn't quite enough. Then I was on 20, and that was too much. Like, I just felt blah. If
Yeah.
you're on it if you have too high of a dosage, you just kind of feel eh.
Yeah.
And I went to my doctor and I said, I feel, yeah, I guess I need to up. And he's like, no, actually, I think we need to lower it. And so I'm on 15 milligrams. So I have to like literally split a pill every time,
Yeah.
but that's the right balance,
Yeah.
and until you get in there and you try it and you test things out and figure out what works for you, like you said, it's different for everybody.
Mhm.
And it's really important to have those conversations with your provider to make sure
Yeah.
that you're finding that right balance and that you find the thing that makes things better.
Right.
That's what you're trying to do. That's what you're trying to do.
Exactly. And
So
be honest with them as
yes,
well. It is okay to not feel okay.
building that rapport and that understanding with your providers is very important. And the same thing with
Definitely.
a counselor, having somebody that you can be truly transparent with, because,
Yeah.
there are things that we all have in our past that we're ashamed of or that we feel guilty about or that we don't like about. I mean, we all have things we don't like about ourselves. Like, I don't
Yeah.
really want you to know this about me, right? I'm gonna hide this. But part of working through that is understanding that some of that shame and guilt that you feel is from your childhood potentially, or from
Yeah.
something traumatic that happened, or something that you are dealing with. And maybe it's not really, you really shouldn't be ashamed or shouldn't feel guilty about it, but it was
Yeah.
your childhood perspective and you have to kind of shift that. And so sometimes we feel so vulnerable and feel so exposed sharing something, and then we find
Yeah.
out that was totally normal. And
Right.
I'm sorry that you were made to feel like this wasn't normal, or, whatever. And
Yeah.
so I think that it goes hand in hand, the counseling as well as the medication, and really a holistic approach of how do you get to the heart of these things and how do you
Mhm.
process it. I'm a huge believer in mindfulness and meditation and
Yeah.
visualization. So, I'm a former competitive gymnast, and
Mhm.
I have no idea where this came from. I don't know if somebody told me this, that I should do this, but every night before bed, I would visualize myself doing my routines perfectly 10 times in a row.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. And if I messed up in my visualization, I had to start that routine over. Um,
Ah.
but I was a state champion,
Yeah.
and I know without a doubt that visualization impacted my ability to do that, to perform well. And
Yeah.
visualization has this huge impact across our lives.
Yeah.
When I have a vision board,
Mhm.
and for our listeners, they may or may not know what a vision board is, but it's basically you create. It can be a poster board. For me, it's like a cork board that's got this pretty frame around it, and I printed out all these beautiful pictures of things that I want in my life,
Yeah.
and I'll never forget. There was a period where I was doing a presentation to some women, and I was talking about the things that I wanted in my vision board, and it had TEDx speaker on there, and it had all these different things, and I'm talking to them and I'm like, afterwards, during this presentation, I had this epiphany moment of, I've done everything on my vision board.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Like,
And it's yeah, I just I love that of just like visualizing and vision boards. And sometimes like I with our brains, it's like our brains are so smart, but also so like stupid. Because it's
mhm,
like your brain will believe whatever you tell it, and it will
yeah,
make, so if you're telling yourself and seeing that like you're going to be a TEDx speaker, that your like routine is going to go well, your brain like makes it happen. But
mhm,
if you were to do the opposite and like, oh, I'm
yes,
never going to do this, or I suck at this, like your brain's just kind of like, all right, well, we suck at this and we're going to,
mhm,
do more things to prove that that is true. Like, so it really is whatever, what is that quote? Like, if whether you believe you can or can't, you're right. Like, it's
yes,
so true. So
yes.
yeah, I love that for you. That's awesome.
It is, and it is that idea of, um, you if you can see yourself doing it,
Mhm.
you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of like muscle memory. You
Mhm.
ride a bike, and as an adult, maybe you haven't ridden a bike in 10 years because, last time you did it was in college or whatever. And
Yeah.
you know what? You get on the bike and you can ride it again
Right.
because your body remembers. Well, your
Yeah.
mind remembers what you visualized,
Yeah.
and it's the same idea of the people that you surround yourself with is who you become, like
Yeah.
five closest or six closest, whatever it is, people that you spend the most time with, that's who you become. So, I read something on LinkedIn recently that talked about making sure to surround yourself with people who are doing more, who are achieving more, who are doing the things that you want to do, because they're going to
Exactly.
push you.
Yeah.
Whether they're actually pushing you or not, you're going to see them. You're going to want to do the things, like you're going to learn from them. You're going to grow into
Yeah.
that space. And it's the same thing. If I, visualize myself getting in shape, we were talking before we got on the call here today, and I did body combat for the first time. And I'm already starting to feel it. Like as I'm talking to you, my muscles are starting to go, So it's gonna be a fun weekend.
Yes.
Um, but if you see yourself, I'm gonna get in shape, I'm gonna be healthy,
Yeah.
you are. You are,
Yeah.
because you get to write the next chapter of your book.
And
You
especially
get that.
when you're with those people that have who are like at that next level, they've done the things that you want to do. So they already know it's possible. And
Mhm.
that is like one thing just thinking about as people are making changes, even if it is like getting into shape. It's like when you're going to the gym and you're around people that are working out, they are like, oh, like, I know working out's good, we're doing it. But if you're at home hanging out with people who like don't work out, they may think that you're crazy, or they're going to be like, oh, that's never going to work, and put like negative ideas in your head. So that's another reason why you need to be careful around the people, because as you level up, if the people around you aren't also going to level up or improve their lives, they're going to see you doing something that challenges their way of thinking, first of all, because they're going to be like, if she's working out, I should work out, but I don't want to. So it's just easier for me to like tell her, you shouldn't do that, or good luck with that, or whatever.
Or
So
like,
it's like,
oh, come on, let's just go get a glass of wine instead. I don't
exactly.
even know that
Yeah.
they'd say don't do it. I think they'd just be, oh, you can do that later.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's like they'll influence you in something else that's not really focused on your goals. But
Right.
yeah, it's like another reason of like why you want to surround yourself with people who are where you want to be. And then again, that just helps you with that visualization, because it's like, oh, these are my people. This is who I'm supposed to be, rather than like being
Right.
stuck in your circumstances and thinking
Yeah.
that that's all there is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think it's really important. Think about who you invite onto your island.
Yeah.
The idea is you can be friendly with everybody, and
Yeah.
you should be friendly. But that doesn't mean that you, it's important to be vulnerable, but you have to be careful with who you're vulnerable with.
Yes.
It needs to be with people who have earned that part of you,
Yeah.
who've earned that privilege,
Hmm.
because it is a privilege when
Yeah.
you share that with somebody. And so you invite the right people onto your island, and you surround yourself with people who are supportive and kind and loving and encouraging and want the very best for you. I was talking with Dr. Amber Tishner the other day, and she's on the podcast as well, and
Yeah.
has her PhD in all of this, and she studies women in the workplace and female rivalry. And
Mm.
one of the things is, she said, surround yourself with people who would say great things about you when you're not in the room,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, as women, we need to build each other up. We need to encourage each other. And we need to do that for others, and they need to do it
Mhm.
for us, And
Yeah.
so it is being um selective, I guess is the right word, being
Yeah.
discerning with
Yes.
who you bring into your inner circle.
Yes.
So
And
let's
especially,
okay.
yeah, I was on that note, I was like, especially as you were kind of like building up, like, who you truly want to be, and having more confidence in yourself and who you are, you know, because for me, I'm like be yourself no matter what, and like other people can deal with it. But if that's totally out of your comfort zone right now, like taking those small steps of like who can you be a little bit vulnerable with? Who's going to be your cheerleader that you can share your thing with? Because you definitely can't share it with everybody
Mhm.
because not everyone's going to get it or not everyone's going to, care for you as some people would. So it is like as you are starting this process, if you're new to it, you want to take those like little baby steps to get there until you can be at the point of like, well, I don't care what they think.
Yeah.
Cause I mean, even me, like I'm still kind of like, I kind of care what they think, but
Yeah, I
so
know.
it's a
It's
work in
hard.
progress.
It's hard. I'm 50 and I'm still like, eh, I'm better now.
Yeah.
Truly, I think the accident was a big part of me just saying,
Yeah.
look, this is who I am. I'm this colorful woman behind me, like that's who
Yeah.
I am. And and that's where I bring value. And it's so interesting. I was talking with a gentleman yesterday, actually, that I've known for probably 15 years, absolutely adore him.
Yeah.
And he did a letter of recommendation for me for a new job I have. And I was talking about how I'm loud, I'm colorful, I'm independent, I'll name the elephant in the room, and how there are some environments where that is not well received. And he
Mhm.
said, that's what I wrote was the best part of you. On your
Oh,
letter of
wow.
recommendation, I was talking about how I love those things about you.
Oh my gosh. That like gave me chills because that's exactly what our like kind of the things that we see as problems with us. Everyone's like, that's the best part about you. That's what makes you you and why we love you. And like sometimes we are so like because those things are like out of the norm or like
Yeah.
that's when we don't fit in, but that's like what makes you stand out and makes you wonderful and makes you you. So like
Yeah.
that what a cool example.
Oh, it was so amazing and so like heartwarming to
Yeah.
hear, because
Yeah.
I never would have thought someone would write that on a reference.
Yeah.
Um, but I think a big part of it is also making sure you go where you're appreciated, not just tolerated.
Yes. Oh, I love that quote. It's
I do
so good.
too. Like,
Yeah.
oh, and I think, I have definitely been in environments where I was tolerated.
Yeah.
I have. And I've been in environments where I've been appreciated. And the
Yeah.
difference is remarkable. And
Right.
so when you have the option to change things,
Mhm.
go where you're loved, go where you're appreciated, go where
Yeah.
people are so excited that you're too much, fill in the blank. Whatever,
Exactly.
whatever it is for you. It could be that you're too quiet. I mean, I don't know, that is definitely not me, but anyone who talks to me knows that's not me. But somebody else, it might be that that's their quality, that they're quiet, they observe everything, they absorb it all, and they're able to really discern things in a way that someone who's talking like me might not notice, right?
Right.
Like we all add value.
Yeah, and, like, when you're somewhere where you're just, like, tolerated, it's, like, it's so energy draining
Yes.
because it's, like, you're not being true to yourself and you're hiding a piece of yourself, and yes,
Mhm.
I do think, like, depending on situations, like, I've kind of had these conversations with people about, like, being authentic and, you know, I personally might show up a little bit differently depending on where I am, but I don't think it's me being inauthentic, it's just, like, knowing the space and adjusting, but still being true to me. But I
Mhm.
think that sometimes it can be people feel like they can't be their full expression in certain places
Mhm.
because of how
Mhm.
people may see them or whatever. And that is
Mhm.
just so energy draining when you feel like you
Yeah.
have to like hide yourself rather than just
Oh, yeah.
alter a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, I was telling someone that I felt like I had to dim my light because it was just too
Yeah.
much for people.
Yeah.
And and what I've come to appreciate is my light is what is it draws people in. It's what
Yeah.
leads people. It's think about a lighthouse kind of thing. Like I
Yeah. I
can
was like, you should
help,
never have to dim your light. Like,
right?
that's sad.
It is. It is sad that I did that.
Yeah.
And I'm not alone in that. Other people have hidden or changed or conformed to try to fit in the mold, and
Yeah.
and it's so hard. So I'd love for you to tell us what are some, like somebody might be listening right now and going, y'all, that's great for you. I don't think I can do that. And so, you talk about little steps.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what some little steps might be for someone?
Yeah. I mean, it really depends on like what it is that they want to do, but just kind of like I was just it really is like, what is the next step? Like if someone, we were talking about working out, and if someone like is like, I want to get in shape, but like I don't want to go to the gym, like, can you go for a walk for 5 minutes? Even if it's like, can you, wherever you park for work, can you park at the back of the parking lot and walk a little bit? Could you just drink an extra glass of water? I love journaling. So it's like, could you write down how you're feeling, especially if you are trying to, you know, it's when it comes to like mental health and thinking about how you're feeling and being aware, if you're not quite ready to share with another person or go see a doctor, like, can you journal about your feelings? Can you journal about like where you want to be? And that was like another thing when you talked about visualization. I was just like, for me, it's like I like to journal. So like I have I try to write out like some of my goals and like what's my priority is. But just like really like what are the little things? And especially if you
Mhm.
are kind of struggling, for me, it's like I always make my bed. And just like for the days that I don't make my bed, I just like if someone came to my house, they would know I was struggling. Like, but it's like a little thing like that is like making your bed every day. Or could
Mhm.
it be like I just want, my house a little bit cleaner. So I'm gonna put the dishes away. Like just and celebrate those, like really be proud
Yes.
of yourself. I think a lot of times we're so busy and we have like
Mhm.
our to-do list that has like a million things on it, and
Mhm.
we like
Mhm.
barely cross off anything. And then we're like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, and I didn't do anything today. Like, what did you do? Even
Right.
if it's small, like, oh, I took that walk, or I was able to call up a friend I hadn't talked to,
Yep.
or I helped someone today, or I sent that email that I've been putting off. Like it can
Yeah.
be little things, and be proud of yourself and actually make a to done list. Because I know
Yeah.
for me, like I love crossing things
Yes.
off. And
Yes.
so it makes you feel good. And it's like recognizing that, like all the things you did do
Yeah.
rather than all the things that you think you didn't do.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah,
celebrating your successes rather than wallowing in your defeat, and the things you didn't
exactly.
do. And it's so interesting, Ariel. At the end of the year, so I'm part of a mastermind group with the National Speakers Association,
Uh-huh.
and we meet every Wednesday. And I am so grateful to be a part of this group. It is
Yeah.
it is really truly people who are doing the things that I want to do, who are highly successful speakers and coaches, and they're just dynamos. And
Yeah.
one of the things at the end of the year that we were talking about is making a list of the things that you accomplished this year.
Yeah.
And I got out my little whiteboard. I have two.
Mhm.
I have a big one on my wall here in my office, and then I have a little one that, is like this big, and I use it for like hardcore brainstorming kind of things.
Yeah.
And I wrote out like major things that I accomplished this year. And
Yeah.
I'm colorful, so it's every other one is like it's pink, purple, green, teal, pink, purple. Like I use bright colors.
Yeah.
Um,
Love it.
I know. It's just like someone else said, I love that it's three colors. I'm like, yeah, I know. How could I can't not gonna do it in black. Are you kidding
Right.
me? Or navy? No. Oh my gosh, Ariel. What I realized was I wrote a manuscript for an entire book.
Yeah.
I launched this podcast. I launched the Queen of Moxie. I started doing a weekly email. I did a monthly newsletter for my writing business. I spoke 7 times in 22. I
Yeah.
started listing all these things, and I was like, wow, like
Yeah.
Queen of Moxie is trademarked. I did that
That's
all by
amazing.
myself. Like
Yeah.
I got a stat from Spotify at the end of the year that said my podcast is in the top 30% of podcasts shared globally.
Congratulations. That's so exciting.
My Little Queens of Moxie podcast, it's my
Yeah.
passion project. Like, holy cow,
Yeah.
right?
And that's like we need to stop and celebrate those things. It's like you did so many amazing things, but it's like we a lot of times we do one thing and we just check it off and move on to the next rather
Yep.
than like taking time to celebrate like
Yep.
I finished my manuscript, and that's so exciting. And
Right.
like and then for anyone who's listening who's like, because I mean you said a lot of big things that like a lot of normal people won't do.
Because I'm not.
But like, it's like if someone is, thinking about like what's going to be on their list, it could be, just like going back to like thinking small of like I listened to a podcast this
Right.
week, like it could be that like
Right.
if you're listening to this right now, you're doing something good for yourself. Like
Yes.
celebrate that too. But yeah, so often we do these amazing things that other people see and they like celebrate us, but we don't celebrate ourselves or even think that it's like that big of a deal,
Yes.
that big of a deal. Like starting a podcast and being consistent with it and being the top 30% is a huge deal. But I'm sure you've also had moments of like, it's just my little podcast. Like, it's not big enough. Like when people are like, you have a podcast and you talk to people, that's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think what struck me is I'm the middle child. I have an older sister and a younger brother. And I was sharing stuff with my dad about my business and my podcast and things like that. And he shared it with my brother. And my brother who's not very easily impressed, was
Mhm.
like, Mary Kay, that's really cool. I was like,
Aw.
well, and he's like, no, will you send me that? Like, will you
Yeah.
send me the stuff from Spotify? And I was like, he's like, you're on Audible and they picked it up on their own. You didn't need, and I'm like, yeah, they just picked it up. Like, I don't even know
Oh,
how it got on Audible. I just know that it's on it, because someone told
yeah.
me. And that's when it was like, oh, I guess this is a bigger deal than I realized. Cause,
Yeah.
so
And just thinking about like that example, because I know a lot of times we do things as far as like what other people will see as successful. It's
Mhm.
kind of cool that like, I mean, you're doing this as your like passion, but then to be recognized. And then it's
Yeah.
always like, I feel like whenever I do something and I did it for myself, no matter what anyone else will say, or even if they don't see it as a huge deal, it's like when I do it for myself and then someone else compliments me, it's like makes it even like
Yeah.
better of like,
Yeah.
yes, this is cool.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, it's that
Yeah.
validation, you
Yeah.
know. Yes. And I do want to go back to something you said about how comparison and is, oh my gosh, it's such a horrible thing. Like, what is success for me is not the same as somebody else. And
Yeah.
your goal might be that you cook one meal a week instead of
Mhm.
eating out,
Yeah.
or that you cook one vegetarian meal a week instead of always having meat, or that you um, do meditation for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
whatever it is. I do think it's really important that you start at a realistic level and what's right for you, and that you
Yes.
don't go in, like I did this body combat today, and I haven't done any aerobic kind of things besides walking in more than 4 years. And it kicked my booty. It did. And I was in there in that class going, this wasn't the right one to start with. Like maybe I should have started a little slower and a little smaller.
Yeah.
And I think you run the risk of, if you jump in like that, and you have these unrealistic expectations for yourself, that you set yourself up to fail because you feel like you're not
Yes.
successful. If when I started walking with my friend Candy, it was, we would walk. I was happy that we walked 2 mornings a week,
Yeah.
and we did it consistently. And before I realized it, we've been doing it for like 4 months. And I was like, wow, we've
Yeah.
been walking a couple times a week, 2 to 3 times a week for 4 months now. And we have a delightful time because we talk and we catch up on our kids and, on all that. Um,
Yeah.
and so finding something that you enjoy, like, and that is celebrating and that's positive, and whether it's journaling, the way art, whatever it is, finding those things for yourself is really important. So
Yes.
we're almost out of time. And one of the things I like to do is I always ask my guests, if you had one piece of advice for
Mhm.
for the women listening, and it can really be about anything. It can be about reclaiming your moxie. It can be about stepping into joy. It can be about living your authentic life. It can be about anything, mental health, whatever.
Yeah.
What would be the one piece of advice that you would give to our listeners?
I love telling people to be kind to themselves because so often we put so much pressure on all the things we should be doing or that we wish we had done, or just, a lot of outside society pressure. Just when I first started my podcast, it was very much like, be the best version of you. And I was very much like going that, like, do your best, and thinking like your best was like going to the gym 5 times a week and going hard. But then I really realized like my best does not look the same every day, and that's okay. And to not put so much pressure on myself, but do like what genuinely is your best for that day, so that like at the end of the day, you can feel good about what you've done, but always just give yourself some grace and be kind to yourself and just be kind to others.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, you spend more time in conversation with yourself than anybody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
We do. We all have conversations with ourselves.
Yes. And so often we say things to ourselves that we wouldn't say to another person
Oh
because
yeah.
it's so mean. And it's like, why would you say that? So don't say that about yourself.
Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It is always just such a delight to spend time with you. I just love it. And I think that's one of the things that's beautiful about when you find your people.
Mhm.
You just have so much fun. You love
Yes.
spending time with them. You just
Yeah.
do. And you're definitely one of those people. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I was like, I could talk to you forever, and I really appreciate this. So
Yeah,
thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing to help people. And,
me too.
I love the Queens of Moxie. I think it's just amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on the Queens of Moxie podcast. I hope that you found it inspirational and that it helps you to think about how you can step into joy and live your authentic life. And remember, we have a weekly email so that you don't miss any of these episodes. Plus, it starts your Monday out with an inspirational quote and a beautiful image. If you haven't subscribed yet, go to queensofmoxie.com and click on Weekly Inspiration. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.